If you want to join me this morning, we're going to be in 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13, and 1 Corinthians 13, and I know you're looking at it going, you are in the middle of a series on Mark. Why are you going to 1 Corinthians 13? Because we're talking about love. And if you have the idea of 1 Corinthians 13 in the back of your mind, a lot of this stuff is going to start to fall together for you. And so if you want to think about it, I want you to consider 1 Corinthians 13 as the call to decision this morning. You know, when we were at camp, we would present a problem. So a kid would come out and he would need some counseling for insert issue. And one of the things we said is you need to understand the problem. You need to understand what the actual root issue is here. And so often what we would do is a kid would come back and start telling us about this, that, or the other thing. And we would have to come back and I would start with really just the plan of salvation. And so maybe they're coming back and they're like, I need to make a decision about the music that I listen to. I would just bring it right back to salvation and hey, present the plan of salvation to them. All right, I'm saved. Cool. The next thing I would go to is I would say, how's your relationship with the Lord? Like really? Like, are you in church? Are you in the Word? Are you serving the Lord? Like how's your relationship? And if you look at it, like really that's what we've been doing over the last few weeks in the book of Mark, is we've been kind of walking through that idea of how is your relationship with the Lord? Because a lot of these guys, they had this weird idea about this verse or that verse and completely wrong conclusions. And what God is trying to do repeatedly is bring them back and say, you are going astray because you don't know the Scriptures and you have no relationship with the Lord. And so what we would do is, as we were trying to understand the problem, is we would say, all right, are you saved? Okay. Doesn't matter what spiritual decision you make. If you're not saved, it's pretty much a pointless spiritual decision. How can I walk in the Spirit if I don't have the Spirit? Second, are you walking with the Lord? Do you have a relationship? And so many will say they do, but they don't. And so you get called back to, has there been that relationship? And then there comes a time where you have to just make a decision that I am going to dedicate my life to the Lord and I'm going to serve Him. And there's so many people who have never really surrendered to the Lord. Yeah, they kind of have a somewhat growing relationship, but when it comes right down to it, there's never been a moment where they've said, you know what? I'm going to serve you no matter what. I'm going to go all in. And then we get to the decision on music. Then we get to the decision on my entertainment. Then we get to the decision on all sorts of things. Because if there's never been a time where you've just kind of decided, I'm going to do it God's way, well, any decision you make is probably going to filter away pretty soon. I think about so many camp decisions I made. I would go to the wilds. I would get convicted about this, that, or the other thing. I remember one time I was convicted about my music, and I came out and I started talking to my counselor, and I was like, I'm convicted about listening to this type of music. And I think it was like Disney music. Just generic Disney music. Like I didn't even have like specifics. It was just like, I'm convicted about listening to Disney music. I don't remember what he told me to do. I don't remember what the decision I made beyond that. I don't even remember how long I kept that decision. Now, I'll be honest, it's not a hard decision to keep now. But I just, what? What kind of, I don't think my counselor ever took me back through any of that. I don't think he ever grounded my faith. I don't think he ever went back and said, so what are you living for? It was just, I'm convicted about my music. Okay, so stop listening to that music. Well, what happens when the conviction wears off? I'm right back where I was. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to walk us through, but I want to present a decision to you. And the decision I'm presenting is take a look at 1 Corinthians 13 and kind of do a gut check and ask yourself, how am I doing in this? Am I going through the motions? Am I someone who, when I look through 1 Corinthians 13, yeah, I'm doing some of those things, and I think I'm okay. Look it with me, okay? No more, hinting at stuff. Let's just read it. 1 Corinthians 13, Paul has just gotten done talking through a lot of spiritual gifts. Now, the idea of a spiritual gift, obviously, is the idea that we have these because we are walking spiritually. All right? But again, they can be faked. Some people might have a spiritual gift that someone else might just have kind of a natural talent in, and so they can put on a facade and make it seem like, I've got a spiritual gift. Look at how good I am. And so what Paul is doing is he is saying, I don't care what it looks like you have. What's your heart actually look like? Like down at the root of it all. You could be the most self-sacrificing person I've ever seen. But what the passage here says is, you might not be doing it out of any sort of love. You might be doing it all for you. We've known those people. We've known those people who can put on a really, really good show. And they can put on a really good show for years. And so I want you to notice 1 Corinthians 13, and I want you to notice the gut check that he is calling us to every single time. And he goes this, he goes, all right, so let's talk about spiritual gifts. The spiritual gift I just finished talking about in 1 Corinthians is a spiritual gift of speaking in tongues. And so he goes, though I speak with the tongues of men, and let's just up the ante a little bit, and of angels. Let's just say I am so good at this spiritual gift thing that I'm talking heavenly languages here. Though I speak with the tongue of men and of angels, and I do not have charity. That's a big fancy word for love. Specifically a self-sacrificing love, specifically a love that leaves people better than you found them, a love that is not about self, it's about others. If I do not have this kind of love, look what he says, I am become as a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. Okay, now does a sounding brass, does a tinkling cymbal, do those things have their use? Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're part of a band, they're great. All right, however, do they last? No. The moment you ting that cymbal, ting, oh, it sounded really pretty, might have contributed something to the overall score, but it's done. Made no difference. And so, sure, you spoke with tongues. You demonstrated this great spiritual gift, but you didn't do it in love. You're about as long-lasting and impactful as a burnt. And he goes on further. He goes, though I have the gift of prophecy. Oh, man, I can speak and I can testify and I can do all of that stuff. Though I have the gift of prophecy, and not only that, I understand all mysteries. I'm a really smart guy. I can figure this all out. I've got the spirit of wisdom on me, man. Though I have the spirit of prophecy and I understand all mysteries, I have all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains. It's interesting because remember what Jesus said? Like, he was talking about the Temple Mount, and he's like, hey, you could say to that mountain, be removed. Like, there's some very similar language to what we've been going through in Mark. And he goes, though I have all faith so that I could look at a mountain and go, be gone with you. And the mountain goes, okay, and moves out of the way. Though I have all of that, and I do not have charity, what? I am nothing. I'm nothing. Oh, come, but you're like mountain moving, like I remember that song from Patch the Pirate, you know, like mountain moving, faith, oh, give me mountain moving. Like, that's good. I moved a mountain. It's like, cool, the earth does that all the time. It's not a big deal. And what he's doing is he's taking all of these supposed gifts and saying, let's just take them all the way to their end. You've got the gift of discernment to the point that you could figure everything out. You got the gift of tongues to the point that you can speak heavenly languages. You know High Enochian. Oh, good job. Like, so what? What's it benefit? What good is it if it is not done in love? And then he goes, though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor. Well, that's a loving deed, isn't it? Apparently not always. Apparently you can do that type of deed and not do it in love. And really, that's what would happen a lot of times back in that day, is you would have a guy who is a recipient of charity, and it's kind of my civic duty to go do this civic duty thing, and I really don't care. I'm just doing the thing because it's expected of me to do the thing. And I could go so far as to giving everything I have, and I could give my body to be burned. And if I do not do it in charity, what? It profits me nothing. And then I want you guys, and you can do this in your own time, I want you to compare what love looks like compared to what it looks like to walk in the Spirit. If you compare the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, meekness, faith, look what happens when love is actually powering you to do what you do. Look at verse 4. Again, charity, just a big fancy word for love, this self-sacrificing love. What is it? Charity suffereth long. Charity is kind. Charity envies not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. You think about how many issues would be solved if we had that selflessness that said, even though it hurt me, I'm going to look out for you more than I look out for myself. I mean, think about how many grudges would end. Think about how much resentment would leave. Think about how much we would leave in God's hands if we said, I am going to live this type of love. Somebody wrongs us, our first reaction is not, what can I do to get them back? Thumbtack on the doorknob, yes. But you think about it. You think about the resentment. You think about what builds in our heart when we are wronged. You think about the hostility. You think about the side eye. You think about that I'm going to hold this against you for a long time. Charity envies not itself. But I hate that person, and I'm seeing them prosper, and I hate them for it. Charity envieth not. I'm going to step on you to get ahead. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. There's a humility that comes in. There's a self-effacingness. But then look at this, verse 5. Charity, true love, a genuine love for others, does not behave itself unseemly. There's certain behaviors that just aren't going to come into play. It's like, but I had a friend of mine who, he had a sense of humor on him. And it was a funny sense of humor. Now he did tend to over-explain the jokes, so that was his one weakness. I was like, dude, stop explaining your jokes. They're funny. Just leave them. All right. But he would sometimes verge into the inappropriate with his jokes. And I had to tell him, I said, hey, dude, part of having a good sense of humor is knowing when not to tell the joke. Like, it's really funny. What you said was really humorous. But you know what? Actually, you kind of shouldn't have said that one. It does not behave itself unseemly. It seeks not his own. But if we are loving someone, there's that moment where we're about to make that crude comment, we're about to make that joke, and out of the love for another person, we go, oh, I'll hold that one back. That actually is a demonstration of love. Because again, what does that type of joke do? It makes us more popular. It makes us better in that person's eyes. It makes us lift it up a little bit. I got a little bit ahead. All I had to do was just make that little snide little comment. It was the perfect joke at the perfect moment, but you feel the prick of the Holy Spirit going, don't say that. And what do? That's the choice. Who do I love? And what it does is love says, I am not going to seek my own way. Love says, I'm going to seek someone else's. Now, the question might arise at this point. You might go, well, who is that someone else? Good question. We'll get to that in just a sec. All right, but look what it says. It says, is not easily provoked. Again, do you see the manifestation of love that it would produce a patience in us? There are times where someone is going to come at you hot and heavy and angry, and your natural response is to match blow for blow. Oh, you are about to unleash the whirlwind. And what does it do? Nope. I'll take that one. And boy, I could come back with something even better. You don't know me. But look what it says. Love, what? It is not easily provoked, even goes so far as to thinketh no evil. I was chatting with a guy this week, and we were working through something, and I was trying to explain to them why I'm dealing with a certain person a certain way. And they were basically saying, this person's radioactive. You need to stay away from this person. This person kind of ruined their reputation, and this person this, and this person that. And I got it. I understood it all. I said, yeah, I understand this person's radioactive. I understand this person is that type of person you don't want to associate with if you're in this community because people hate them. But I said, I need to. Because I don't want to see them crushed under the weight of what they just did. And they were like, so you're basically like, you're trying to exemplify Christ's forgiveness. And they were like, I struggle with that. And I was like, and it's not even so much Christ's forgiveness, because they didn't wrong me. They wronged someone else. So they've got to deal with that themselves. I said, but this has nothing to do with me. I'm just simply trying to be a resource here. Because if I'm not a resource, this person is very easily depressed and very struggling, and I don't know what might happen. And I said, this one thing they did, as bad as it was, I don't want to see them go commit suicide. So if I can be that resource behind the scenes, just to be like, hey man, how you doing? Well, why are you talking to that person? I'm just trying. And there came a point where I might have to say eventually, there's just no helping this person, and I have to cut ties. But for now, I need to exemplify the love of Christ. And that person even admitted, they were like, yeah, I struggle with that. And there are times where you come in love and you start working behind the scenes to help someone, and everybody around you is looking going, why are you associating with them? Why are you doing that? You take the reputational hit. Sometimes you hurt. Sometimes people don't understand, and you're just going, you know what? I'm going to try. And you look at where it goes from there, verse 6, it says, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth. There are times where you're going to help someone. There's times where you're going to come alongside them. You're not rejoicing that they fell. You're not rejoicing. You're trying to lift them back up. And so again, this love is going to say, I'm not going to celebrate you when you're doing sin. But I'm going to come alongside and I'm going to rejoice, well, hopefully when you see the truth and you come back. But I'm not celebrating your sin. And I think that's an important distinction we need to make when we deal with this topic of love, that we are not condoning the sin. We're not. There are sins that people do. And I had a week of it, dealing with it on all sorts of fronts, where there were just sins that were done. It were just things that happened. And every one of us has this, where we go through things, where we sin. I don't rejoice at the sin. I'm not celebrating the sin. But you come alongside the person and you say, hey, this sin isn't who you are. There is a place for repentance. There is a place for reconciliation. Let's get back up. And this week, I've had some people make good decisions. I've had some people make bad decisions. It's not up to me. And you look what happens here. It says this, the person who is loving is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, rejoices in truth. But then look at what the loving person does. This is what happens when we give the gospel. This is what happens when we're patient with people. This is what happens when we're betrayed and we have to bear the burden of that betrayal. Look what it says. Beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. I mean, if you've ever paddled against the stream, as it were, you understand the burden of this verse. I've had students who did not like me because of some of the decisions I've had to make to discipline them as my students. And there were times where I had to work behind the scenes because that student wouldn't listen to me, but they'd listen to this other person. And so I had to work through this other person to continue to be a ministry to that student because they wouldn't listen to me anymore. And then to hear that person praise that person over there for all the work they did, and thank you so much for investing in me. And it stings because you're sitting there going, I'm the reason you're still here. I vouched for you behind the scenes to make sure that you couldn't get kicked out. I worked on your behalf, and you hate me because I had to discipline you. But it's not about me. It's not about what I've done. It's not about, look at how great of a person. No, what is this? It's me saying, I love you enough that I'm going to do whatever it takes to minister to you, even if it's not me that's doing the ministering. And if I can work through another means to minister to you, I'm going to do that. And that's why it says, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. And then it says this, charity never faileth. If you live a life that is driven by love, if you live a life that is driven by this, it'll keep going. He goes on, but these prophecies, all of these other things, they'll fail. They'll cease. So seek after charity. He goes down further, verse 12, he says this, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then we'll see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know even as I am known. But now abideth faith, hope, and charity, these three. So there's three things that are really going to drive us as Christians now. We don't have to worry about all the spiritual gifts. We don't have to worry about understanding everything. But if you can understand three things, hope, faith, hope, and charity. But the greatest of these is charity. Now, with that being said, and that being the introduction of my message 4 minutes before I have to end the message, look at Mark chapter 12, because I want you to see where this plays out. Mark chapter 12. And if you look at Mark chapter 12, we're building off of where we were last week, and Jesus has been asked all sorts of questions. But when you get to Mark chapter 12, I want you to see how this plays out. Because remember, they keep coming to him with more and more questions. They keep trying to catch him up. They keep trying to stumble him. And so look at Mark chapter 12 and look at I was at Mark chapter 14, and no wonder I couldn't find the verse. Mark chapter 12, and look at verse 28. And it says, and one of the scribes came, and having heard all of these, so all of these other questions, they reasoned together. He perceived that he had answered them well, and he says, all right, what is the first commandment of all? Like, what's the primary commandment that I need to worry about doing? Well, look at what Jesus says. Jesus says, all right, well, the first of all commandments is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Okay, that's something the Jews to this day still say. It's called the Shema. All right, and they get up and they'll say it, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. And it's a reminder that there's only one God and He's the only one that we're going to serve. And it's just a great reminder because you think about it, if there's only one God for us to serve, there's only one person we have to worry about pleasing. I don't have to be, I remember like the old Greek myth, you got Odysseus who spends all day like 10 years at sea. And he gets to the end of his sea voyage and he goes, you know what? I'm going to walk inland with a paddle over my shoulder until somebody asks me what that thing is. And his whole goal was, I'm going to get as far away from the ocean as I possibly can and hopefully find some other God that I can get as far away from the ocean God as I possibly can. Because, he had a really bad time with Poseidon. And it's that idea with, I'm just so done with the ocean. If I move as far away from the ocean as I can, maybe I'll find some other God. And just leave me alone. I hate to break it to you. There's nowhere where we can go where we can outrun God. All right? He's not the God of the hills so we can run to the valley, or the God of the trees so we can run to the plain. That's not how this works. And so Israel has it right, where they're saying, the Lord your God is one Lord. So Jesus nails it. That other guy nails it. We got it, okay? We all understand. But why are things like idolatry? Why are things like covetousness? Why are those all brought up? Because what happens is when our love starts to change, we start to build another God. And we start to serve that God. So when I talk about love, the first love we need to focus on really is that love of the one true God. Making sure it's not love of self, making sure it's not love of some other idol. We make sure we've got our love right, the love of God. That's why I said, when I went at camp, we would come back to, has there been a moment in your life where you've been saved? Have you built a relationship with God? Have you made a decision where you've committed to Christ to serve Him with your life? What are all those doing? It's reminding us that there's one God and He alone I will serve. But look where Jesus goes next. And this is why I started off with love, because when we hear this word love, we have such a weird definition, it means nothing. Love is a meaningless word. So take what he describes in 1 Corinthians 13, slot it in, and look what he says. He starts off, he says, the first commandment, O Israel, hear, O Lord, our Lord is one Lord. Thou shalt love the Lord, what? With all thy heart, and all thy soul, and all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. So all we have to worry about is just fully and totally and completely loving God as best as we possibly can with everything we have, and don't hold anything back. There you go. There's your decision point. Okay. That's it. Now, obviously, there's more to it, but I want you to see that, like how you doing on that kind of love. Okay, it's pretty impossible to do that right. It's very, very hard. But if we're serving Him, if we're keeping Him our focus, if every day we get up, we put on the whole armor of God and say, I am going to fully commit to Him today. You love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. There you go. That's the first commandment. But look where he goes next. And this is where 1 Corinthians 13 comes in. The second is like it, namely this: thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Now think about that. If you truly did love your neighbor like you love yourself, it answers a lot of questions. It takes care of a lot of things. You know, if you almost want to think about it, if you got the 10 Commandments, those 2 tablets, the whole first tablet's more or less, love God. Second tablet, love others. And you think about the things that you would not do because you wouldn't want them done to you. The things that you would not say because you wouldn't want them said to you. The way you wouldn't act, the way you wouldn't think, the way you wouldn't, all those things. And he goes, listen, if you're going to do it to someone else and you wouldn't want it done to you, okay, you failed that one. Now this is really easy preaching. This is where it becomes very hard to do. Which is why I point out that if you look at the fruit of the Spirit and you look at the actions of love, they really do overlap nicely. Why? Because the Bible says if you walk in the Spirit, you will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And so again, it's one of those like, this is super simple, guys. How come we're not all doing it? Okay, because we live in the flesh. We live in the sight of our own eyes. We are driven by our own passions. We're driven by our own wants. We lose track of who God is. Because again, we don't have a big giant statue that we're staring at going, oh yeah, he's watching. But look where he goes. The second commandment is this: thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is no greater commandment than these. And look where it goes. The scribe said, well, master, you've said the truth. For there is one God, and there's none other but he. And to love him with all the heart, with all the understanding, and with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love thy neighbor as himself is more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices. I have all the demonstration of spiritual gifts, but if I don't have love right, I got this one wrong. I have all these sacrifices I could do, but if I don't have love right, I got this one wrong. And look what Jesus said. And when Jesus saw that he answered him discreetly, Jesus said, thou art not far from the kingdom of God. You're so close. You're right there. And look what it did. And no man after that durst ask him any questions. Oh, you're getting too close to the truth. We're done talking to you. So I'll leave you with this. How's your love today? First of all, how's your love for God? How's your love, how's your focus, how's your attention span when it locks onto God? Are you serving him like he's the only God? Or is there another God in the midst? And then second, which naturally springs out of that love, how's your love for everyone else? I realize that's a broad-ended question, but again, it's going to look differently based on where each one of us is. But you know whether you're loving others as you should. You know whether you're treating others as you should. You know when you read through 1 Corinthians 13, am I actually doing that? But then I'll ask you the third question. If you are loving others, are you actually doing it in the Spirit? Are you actually doing it through the power of God, or are you doing it through your own great willpower just to be seen of men? One God calls us to love him first and foremost. Others we are called to love, but we are called to do it for the right reason and to glorify God. So let God be our focus today. Let's close in prayer.